Carl Jung. Why you must confront your inner monster. There is a creature living inside you that would rather ruin your life than let you remain a stranger to yourself. It is patient, intimate, and strangely loyal. It is not a figment of religion or superstition. Carl Jung gave it a name simple enough to be dismissed and unsettling enough to be true: the shadow. The mind, he believed, does not shine with light by banishing darkness. It burns because darkness is allowed to exist within it. If you refuse to look at this creature, it will rule you from below. If you dare to turn and face it, your fear becomes a threshold. Jung once watched the civilized world arrange itself for catastrophe and wondered if a similar catastrophe wasn't always assembling within a person as well. In 1913, weeks before the Great War broke the world's mask, he saw visions of floods and blood, cities sinking beneath a Red Sea. He was a physician of the soul and a man of science in a century that worshipped daylight. Yet his inner life spoke in storms. He did not run. He wrote, he drew, he listened. And he asked a question that sounds like a riddle and feels like a dare. What if the frightening thing in you is not your enemy, but your unlived life trying to be born? The shadow is not a villain from a storybook. It is the collection of qualities you cannot admit belong to you. It is your anger when your mouth smiles and says, "No problem." It is your envy when you perform gratitude. It is your hunger when you insist you're above such appetites. It is your contempt for cruelty while you rehearse your own. It is also your courage you dismiss as reckless, your creativity you shame as childish, your ambition you denounce as arrogance. Anything that doesn't fit your favorite picture of yourself gets sent down to the basement. The door is locked. You throw the key into the garden and pretend the earth swallowed it. But the house remembers its rooms. At odd hours you hear dragging sounds below the floorboards, a chair scraping on stone, a glass shattering. No intruder, no thief, only something you own but refuse to recognize. You say, "I don't know what came over me." You say, "That wasn't like me." The shadow doesn't care. In moments of stress, sleep, intoxication, infatuation, when your precious image grows thin as tissue, the creature steps through and uses your hands. You wake in the morning and stare at the messages you sent, the words you spoke, the small betrayals. Your eyes widen and you whisper the oldest lie in the human tongue. "I didn't mean it." Jung would have smiled, maybe sadly. Meaning is not a committee decision. Meaning is a river that carries more than the ego on its little raft. You do not become yourself by choosing virtues, as if from a lunch menu. You become yourself when the excluded returns, when the monster at the threshold is invited in and given a seat, when you say, "If you are mine, then I must know you." He was adamant about the danger. This is no pep talk and no spiritual hobby. The shadow is a moral problem, he wrote, because to become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of one's personality as present and real. They are real. They demand responsibility. There is an ancient pattern encoded into myths older than the city walls. A dragon coils around a treasure deep in a cave. It is malign and magnificent. Heroes do not grow by avoiding it. They grow by confronting it. You are meant to suspect a trick here. Perhaps there is no treasure, only teeth. But Jung found, and patience found, and the old stories insist that the hoard is not gold. It is what you most need, but were not allowed to desire. It is the voice you silenced to maintain a truce with your family, your school, your culture. It is the power you wrapped in fear to keep yourself small and safe. The dragon does not guard the treasure. The dragon is the treasure, misnamed and exiled. Very few people set out to meet their monster. They are forced. An affair detonates a marriage. A quiet resentment becomes a public rage. A respectable man discovers in himself a petty thief. A saint discovers in herself a liar. Or nothing dramatic happens, only a slow suffocation. The life they chose fits like a costume that scratches the skin. They perform their goodness until it turns them gray. The monster begins as an irritation and escalates to sabotage. Anything to open the door. One of Jung's most powerful insights was simple in expression and brutal in implication. What you deny in yourself, you will find in the world and call it fate. You will feel hunted by the very qualities you disown. You will choose partners who carry your shadow. You will choose friends who specialize in your secret vices. You will find enemies who advertise your own cruelty and hate them for the service. You will become a curator of coincidences, a pilgrim of evidence, a diligent collector of reasons to avoid the mirror. It is tempting to imagine the shadow can be defeated. It cannot. It can be known. That knowledge changes its power. The creature you refuse becomes a tyrant. The creature you face becomes a teacher. The difference is not mystical. It is practical. It has the texture of daily courage. It is not neat. Under fluorescent lights, with forms to fill and meetings to attend, the talk of monsters seems melodramatic. But every office, every dinner table, every church and parliament hosts the same ritual. Masks on the surface, monsters in the basement. So much effort spent maintaining the mask, and so little courage spent meeting the one who knocks from below. Jung offered no easy absolution. He did not recommend positivity. He did not ask you to be nice. He asked you to be whole. There is a sentence attributed to him that has the feel of iron. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your inner monster is not a taboo to be canceled. It is a fact of nature. It is a reservoir of force. It is the price of potency. No one grows by staying pure. They grow by contaminating their perfection with reality. If the thought frightens you, good. Fear is an honest guide. If you are curious, better. Curiosity is the first tool. If you are already exhausted, that is also a beginning, because exhaustion often means the mask is tired of being held up. Tonight you may dream of a staircase going down, of a room you have never entered. In waking life, you may notice the small cruelty you commit, the small hunger you justify. You may feel the heat of something that has your fingerprints. The next question is the only one that matters. Are you willing to meet what you are? The rest is... Imagine a woman whose life is performatively tidy. Her bookshelf is clean, her calendar full, her friendships tasteful and brief. People describe her as put together. She prefers the word contained. Her parents praised restraint. Her teachers rewarded compliance. She became an artist of the acceptable. Then she begins to dream of dogs wild, matted, generous, with saliva bursting into her spotless kitchen and chewing the cushions of her chairs. She laughs it off until the dogs appear in the day. In a sudden hunger she cannot manage, in a desire that embarrasses her, in an impulse to break something beautiful just to hear it shatter. When she finally sleeps with a person her friends disapprove of, she calls it a mistake. The affair lasts 2 years. She will later call it the event that saved her. Or take a man everyone trusts. He is affable, reliable, a good listener. He prides himself on never losing his temper, on being the one who understands. His emails are always conciliatory. His language is always, we, never I. He never asks for a raise, because that would be unseemly. He never says no because he is kind. He is so kind that he drinks alone in the garage at night, a little more each week. His wife tries to find the sentence that will wake him. He keeps smiling. He begins to resent the people he helps. He makes lists of grievances on a legal pad and hides them in the toolbox. One day he hears himself speaking to his son in a voice he does not recognize. He is shocked to discover that his rage has perfect aim. These are not hypotheticals assembled to prove a point. They are the style of our lives when we treat the shadow as an enemy external to us. The mask we present to the world is what Jung called the persona. There is nothing inherently false about it. We need a face to meet the faces we meet. The trouble begins when the persona claims the whole territory, when the representative pretends to be the country. We decorate the mask with virtues we can manage. We exile everything else. But exiled parts do not die. They form what Jung called complexes, clusters of emotion, memory, impulse, and meaning that move through us like weather systems. They have a strange autonomy. You feel them grab you. Your vision narrows. Your voice acquires a rhythm that isn't entirely yours. You are possessed, and afterward you say with some embarrassment, "Something came over me." Yes, something came over you. Something that is you. It is like a relative you avoid inviting to dinner, because you know they will tell the truth you do not want said. Complexes are not evil. They are survival strategies that learn too much power. A child who learned to please becomes a woman who cannot stop pleasing even when it hurts her. A boy who learned to be good becomes a man who cannot locate his boundaries. A teenager who is shamed for sexuality becomes an adult whose desires only thrive in secrecy and annihilation. The shadow is not a single beast. It is a habitat. Projection is the migration pattern of this habitat. It is how the shadow travels. We say, "She is so selfish," while our own hunger is starved. We say, "They are corrupt," while our hands itch to take. We say, "He is dangerous," while our cowardice finds a uniform. Jung once wrote that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. Whole friendships are founded on shared projections. Whole movements are built on exile and hatred of the traits no one will own. The more polished the collective persona, the more virulent the shadow. Think of any doctrine of purity, and you will find a landfill offstage where the impurities are dumped. At the individual level, the consequences arrive as accidents, symptoms, uncanny coincidences. A conflict-avoidant professional finds themselves repeatedly working under abusive bosses. A self-styled free spirit keeps partnering with tyrants. The spiritual seeker who preaches love becomes a rumor factory. We keep meeting ourselves and others like a joke that gets less funny each time. Jung listened to dreams as if they were letters written in a hand older than the ego. He was famous for the house dream, appearing in different patients with local variations. A house with several floors. The top is neat and familiar. Below is the ground floor. Respectable rooms. Then a door leads to a basement, dust, tools, some scrap furniture. Deeper still, a trapdoor opens into an older foundation, Roman, perhaps stone and arch. In some versions, a stair spirals into a cave, and there a presence waits. Sometimes it is a corpse, sometimes an animal, sometimes a prisoner. The dreamer wakes, heart pounding, and says, "I live in a place with rooms I didn't know I owned." That is the suspense of the psyche. There is more of you than you are using, and some of it scares you because it promises change. The monster you fear is a keeper of thresholds. It lives where I would never turns into I might, and I can't mutates into I must. This is menacing because the life you have organized is a fragile architecture. You know where you keep the plates and how to appear decent. Dissent threatens all of that. The shadow is not polite. It does not respect your schedule. It arrives with its own clock and its own language. If you ignore it long enough, it will speak in illness, accidents, and loss. If you listen, it begins to speak in images, slips of the tongue, and unexpected tenderness. Jung had his own descent. After his break with Freud, his inner life erupted. He wrote in red ink in a crimson book, drew mandalas, spoke with figures who came uninvited. He feared madness. He kept working. He built a tower by a lake with his hands to give his psyche stone to hold. He argued with a wise old man he called Philemon, who taught him humility in the face of the imaginal. He did not publish these conversations for decades, because he understood their intimacy and danger. He understood that the monsters in him were speaking in the first person and the plural. It is easy to make a man like this into a guru, to think his monsters were metaphors, and ours are petty. That is an avoidance. Your monster may be smaller, and more domestic, the jealousy you call concern, an ambition you call duty, a sexual hunger you call romance, a craving for cruelty you call humor. There is nothing glamorous about it. It lives where you are. Its horde is the life you have not yet allowed. It will sometimes attempt to break your good life, to deliver you to a real one. The conflict is not between good and evil in the way children understand it. It is between unconsciousness and consciousness. A cruel person who admits their cruelty is less dangerous than a saint who denies their capacity for it. A coward who knows they are afraid is less dangerous than a brave person who cannot admit they run when it counts. The unknown in us is what injures the world when it moves through us without a name. The monster is terrible. The monster without a name's worse. If you are waiting for a sign that the work must begin, notice what irritates you most in others. Notice where you are self-righteous. Notice whom you avoid and why. Notice your jokes. Notice what you cannot imagine forgiving. Notice the way you narrate your own goodness. The shadow likes to hide in noble costume. It likes to call itself integrity and principle and taste. If exposed, it sulks and bites. Let it. The animal calms when acknowledged. It does not vanish. It learns you can hear. What if the monster is not only what would ruin you, but also what could rescue you? This is the twist that offends vanity and stuns the heart. The shadow is not just the repository of rage and shame. It is also the archive of all your vitality that didn't fit. Jung called this the golden shadow, the talents, strengths, and dangerous virtues we reject because they threaten our belonging. The instincts that refused to die became fanged. The gifts that were not welcomed turned nocturnal. They learned to survive without your approval. Children know this long before adults do. Watch them run violent with joy, shameless with curiosity, ruthless with honesty. Then watch their faces learn calculation. Too much, someone says. Tone it down. The animal retreats. A girl learns that her ferocity makes adults uncomfortable, so she becomes agreeable and discovers migraines. A boy learns that his sensitivity is unmanly, so he becomes a bully and discovers that he cannot feel his own grief. The golden shadow holds the ferocity and the sensitivity both. When you go down into the basement, it is not only to leash a beast, it is to find a lion that will walk beside you. Jung's method for this work was not to moralize, but to converse. He developed what he called active imagination. You sit with an image or a mood and allow it to speak. You answer, you argue, you draw, you write dialogues with your own figures. It is not a performance. It is not an exorcism. It is a slow, risky intimacy with whatever appears. You might speak with envy and find that it wants you to admit you care about excellence. You might speak with rage and find that it wants you to set a boundary you refused to set 10 years ago. You might speak with lust and find that it wants warmth, not conquest. Conversations like these do not flatter the ego. They demolish its management plan and replace it with relationship. He also turned to alchemy, not as a pseudoscience to be performed in kitchens, but as a symbolic language the psyche had invented to speak about transformation. The stages nigredo, the blackening, albedo, the whitening, rubedo, the reddening, are not chemistry lessons. They are weather reports from the soul. Nigredo is the descent, despair, confusion, breakdown of our previous order. Albedo is the washing, the dawn after the storm, when the pieces are seen without fever. Rubedo is the union, the heat that fuses opposites into a stronger metal. The monster plays a role in each. It breaks the brittle persona, reveals the rejected parts, and then lends its heat to the new alloy. Without facing it, there is no metal, only ornament. You begin to see why Jung distrusted moralism. It makes you tidy but thin. He was interested in integration, not innocence. To integrate the shadow is to accept that you are dangerous and to become responsible for that danger. It means realizing you could manipulate and choosing not to. You could lie effectively and choosing to tolerate the discomfort of the truth. You could seduce and choosing to love. You could destroy and choosing to build. It means letting the intensity you refuse to own feed your work, your care, your voice, your art. There is an earthquake that follows this acceptance. It rearranges your relationships. The people who loved your mask may no longer love you. The jobs that rewarded your suppression may punish your new clarity. You may lose communities that depended on your silence and gain a solitude that is frightening because it is honest. Individuation, the word Jung used for the process of becoming the person you are, sounds delicate and private. It is not. It is a public hazard to the systems that thrive on your denial. When you claim your shadow, you stop being easy to use. There is also relief. When you no longer spend the day guarding the mask, you have energy. When you admit that you are capable of cruelty, you stop being so surprised when you find it in yourself, and you stop acting it out accidentally. When you admit your envy, you can admire and learn rather than sabotage. When you admit your ambition, you can work directly rather than hide behind cynicism. When you admit your hunger, you can eat and be satisfied rather than steal. Knowing your own darkness, Jung suggested, is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. It cultivates mercy without sentimentality. But what about actual evil? What about the monstrous that is not a misunderstood gift, but a predatory appetite, a delight in harming? Jung was not naive. He saw that there are people and systems organized around consuming others. His point was not to excuse them, but to keep you from collaborating unconsciously. The unintegrated shadow is precisely what tyrants recruit. If you refuse to recognize your capacity for cruelty, you are more likely to become the instrument of someone else's. If you disown your need for belonging, you may trade judgment for membership. The shadow that is owned is harder to buy. We are historical creatures. We inherit not only eye color and family recipes, but also collective complexes. Jung warned that the gods of old did not die. They became diseases, psychological patterns that possess masses. Observe how quickly crowds form a mask. Observe how quickly they appoint an enemy. Observe how quickly individual responsibility dissolves in chance. The monster scales up. Those who have not met their inner tyrant will serve the outer one. Those who have spoken with their inner fanatic are less likely to march with the external kind. This is not an argument for isolation. It is a plea for inner work as civic hygiene. If this seems abstract, bring it home. Notice when you speak as we, and who we is allowed to condemn. Notice when humor becomes cruelty, and when disagreement becomes heresy. Notice the warmth you feel when your side is pure, and the cold you feel when nuance knocks. The same mechanisms that create genocides create office politics. The same mechanisms that create witch hunts create internet pile-ons. You are not separate from this. You are the creature that invented this. To confront your inner monster is not to become pure. It is to become complicated in a way that makes you reliable. The person who has made a truce with their shadow will tell you no and mean it. They will apologize without flattery. They will praise without a hook. They will fight because they must, not because they like the taste. They will look at their own hands before they point. The world does not become safe because such people exist, but it becomes less terrifying because you can recognize in their eyes that someone is at home. There is a part of you that remembers a time before you learned your name. It knows the forest without a path. It knows the cold of a river at night. It knows fear like an animal knows it, total, immediate, thick with sound. When the monster rises, that part of you hears old music. It is not your playlist. It is deeper. It is drums from an age when the fire was the center of the world. The fear is not sentimental. It is the alarm that tells you you're close to something real. All the old stories agree that descent is not optional. Inanna goes down, stripped of crown and cloth and certainty. Orpheus goes down and loses what he loves because he cannot resist the urge to look. Christ goes into the desert and meets a voice offering a painless kingdom. Buddha sits under a tree, while Mara, Lord of Illusion, parades desire and terror in equal procession. Saint Anthony wrestles with devils that are suspiciously familiar. The metaphors change. The geography does not. There is always a threshold, a wound, and a voice that says, "Turn back." There is always another voice, quieter and older, that says, "Continue." You do not have to believe in gods to understand this. You only have to remember the moment you told the truth and watched a relationship shatter, or the moment you confessed to yourself that you wanted more and watched your plan dissolve, or the moment you looked at a memory you had sworn to never look at and felt your skin register the temperature of reality. The body knows descent. The stomach drops. The chest tightens. The limbs grow heavy. Then slowly, sometimes over months, a bright line appears where there was only fog. It isn't relief. It's orientation. It is tempting to negotiate with dissent. You promise to forgive if the past apologizes. You promise to be brave if your friends approve. You promise to change if you are guaranteed that nothing you love will be lost. The monster is a bad negotiator. It understands cost. The price is innocence. The price is the identity that kept you small. The price is the admiration you earned by pretending. You might be loved less. You might become lonelier for a while. You will definitely become less easy to market. There is grief here. It is heavy and private. It will be mistaken by others for arrogance. It will be mistaken by you for a mistake. What you gain is not a new mask. It is a new gravity. When you walk, something walks with you that cannot be bought. When you speak, your words have weight that cannot be borrowed. When you love, you no longer seek rescue. You seek encounter. When you fight, you are not looking for permission. The monster has not vanished. It sits in the corner, alert, a companion that sometimes growls when you try to lie. You do not leash it. You learn its name. You learn that sometimes it is called no. Sometimes it is called not yet. Sometimes it is called I want this. Sometimes it is called I am done. There are practices people have found helpful, but this is not a list to check off. Think of them as ways of opening the window so the animal can smell the rain. Write a letter you will never send and let the sentences surprise you. Draw your anger with hands that tremble and do not correct the lines. Sit in a room and say aloud, envy, speak, and write down what you hear without sarcasm. Tell one truth to one person who can tolerate complexity. Go for a walk when you want to type a war. Interrupt yourself a second before you say yes and ask, is that true? These are not hacks. They are forms of reverence. Reverence, because the monster is not a mistake. It is nature inside culture. It is the wolf and the storm and the night that refuses to be turned into day. It is the memory of being a creature before you learn to be a character. To confront it is to accept you are an animal with a soul, not an idea with a face. The relief is peculiar. You become less ashamed of your hunger and more responsible for it. You become less dazzled by other people's performance and more interested in their reality. You become less cruel, not because you are better, but because you can feel the places in you that would enjoy cruelty if left unattended. You begin to guard yourself from yourself with tenderness and law. You will likely cry. Tears are part of the washing, not only for what was done to you, but for what you have done. Not only for the losses imposed upon you, but for the losses you chose. Not only for the people who hurt you, but for the people you hurt while imaginarily saving them. Shame will try to drown you. Let it come, and then learn to breathe under it. Shame is useful as a signal, not as a home. It tells you, this is not the person you want to be. Guilt tells you, repair is needed. Neither tells you, you are trash. The monster loves that story because it keeps you in the basement forever. Better to admit your worst and then work. If you find yourself thinking, this is too hard, you are not wrong. It is hard, but your current system is harder. How much energy have you spent not knowing what you know? How many hours have you worked to maintain the idea of yourself you think others will accept? How much resentment has accumulated like plaque on your tongue because you kept saying yes? The hardness is front-loaded. The ease that follows is not a vacation. It is a lack of friction inside your own decisions. The trapdoor opens less often. The dogs stop tearing up the furniture. You find you can be alone with your phone across the room. And you find a kind of beauty you had not expected. A terrible beauty, the Irish poet said, and Jung would have nodded. Your face looks more like your face. Your voice changes timbre. People who knew you will say they feel calmer in your presence. They will not know why. Babies sometimes like you more. Dogs definitely will. You will make fewer promises and keep more of them. You will apologize faster and less dramatically. You will catch yourself before you repeat the old trick and laugh a little. The monster will not be flattered. It will grunt, as if to say, "Good." The tower Jung built by the lake bears inscriptions in Latin and Greek about time and fate and the soul. He carved into stone because paper was too fragile for what he had learned. He knew that the mind is a landscape with weather and animals and ruins. He knew that the monster is part of the ecology. He knew that exorcism is a fantasy of control, while hospitality with boundaries is a form of sovereignty. You might never build a tower, but you can choose a corner of your life to carve with your true name. It will feel like heresy at first. It will feel like coming home afterward. History is not a museum of dates and uniforms. It is a living record of what happens when inner work is neglected. The 20th century is a gallery of shadows projected onto nations. Industrious people convinced themselves that their cruelty served order. Romantic people convinced themselves that their covetousness served destiny. Pious people convinced themselves that their fear served God. The monsters were busy. They always are. They do not care which flag they march under. They care that you refuse to know them, so they can rent your hands at a discount. But history is also a quiet record of the opposite, of individuals who confronted their monsters and so broke a chain. A judge who finally admitted his need for power and decided to use it justly. A mother who acknowledged her resentment and stopped passing it to her children. A leader who recognized his hunger for worship and chose to step down before it consumed his judgment. These do not become famous. They do not get statues. They are the acts that make a civilization habitable. The paradox is that confronting your inner monster does not make you safe. It makes you trustworthy. Safety is a fantasy, a product to be sold. Trustworthiness is a stance. It is earned by looking at what you are and becoming the guardian of it. It means that when the old mood returns, and it will, you recognize its footsteps. You do not pretend surprise. You do not act it out. You say, "Yes, I know you," and you sit together until it passes. Sometimes you let it speak on your behalf when a boundary is being crossed. Sometimes you say, "Not today," and redirect its strength into a necessary task. Either way, your hands are your own. There is a quieter gift, more intimate than reputation. Jung called it the self, not as another mask, but as the center and totality. The pattern that includes what you like and what you hate, what you chose and what you inherited. It is not the same as the ego that wants things and fears humiliation. It is the axis a life can revolve around without dizziness. When the monster is rejected, the axis wobbles. When the monster is integrated, the axis stabilizes. You feel it not as triumph, but as alignment. You find yourself in the right fights. You find yourself unmoved by bait. You find yourself kinder without theatrics. This is not a one-time rite. It is a rhythm. The seasons return. The basement accumulates new furniture. The animal checks the doors. You grow old with it. You learn that even chaos has a scent you can recognize. Culture will not help you much. It will hand you slogans and enemies. It will ask you to shop for identities. It will beg you to perform. It will punish you for pauses. The work is private and public at once. Private, because no one can do it for you. Public, because the way you handle your monster shapes how you handle power intimacy, and truth. One night soon, when you wake between 3 and 4 and the room is a different country, do not reach immediately for distraction. Place your hand on your chest and listen for pause steps. Ask a simple question in a whisper you use only for prayer and emergency. What am I refusing to know? Wait. If nothing comes, ask the other question. What have I hidden that would make me strong if I claimed it? The answers may be small, embarrassingly plain. That joke was cruel. I am in love. I want to leave. I want to build. I am afraid. I am tired of pretending. Do not turn those answers into content. Turn them into choices. You will betray someone when you choose. Perhaps it will be the version of you that made everyone comfortable. Perhaps it will be the chorus in your head, calling you selfish. Perhaps it will be a crowd you don't owe your life. The monster does not applaud. It attends. It watches to see if you will keep your word to yourself. If you do, it relaxes a fraction. If you do not, it begins again to plot its dramatic entrance. This is not punishment. It is a law of inner physics. Denied energy seeks discharge. Owned energy seeks form. Form is how you make a life sturdy enough for honesty. It can be a marriage where the contract includes difference. It can be a vocation where your talent is used without worship. It can be a solitude that is not a punishment. It can be a friendship where humor never punches down. It can be a practice of writing without an audience. It can be faith that does not require ignorance. You will know form is right when the monster settles into it, like a cat into a box, suspicious but content. You will know it is wrong when the howling returns. If you are waiting for permission, consider this the whisper that ends waiting. The only authority that matters here is the one you cultivate by telling the truth to yourself and surviving it. Jung was not trying to invent a modern myth. He was describing the territory. The monster is not going away. It will not be satisfied by your performance. It will not be appeased by punishment. It asks for recognition and a job. Give it work worthy of its teeth. We make history from these small, invisible choices. Every time we choose to look rather than project, we remove a brick from a wall that has imprisoned whole generations. Every time we speak our shadow in a room and the room survives, we widen the space where others can breathe. Every time we admit our capacity for harm and choose repair, we teach the monster a new trick, to guard what we love instead of devour it. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Boring History.